Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here, to be in the 10th AEPF. I was asked by the organizers, by Dottie in particular, to try to do an analysis of the AEPF in 5 to 7 minutes. So 20 years, 18 years of history. And I'm not exactly sure if I can do that, but nevertheless, I will try. Well, it seems like only yesterday when we got together on the eve of the Asia-Europe leaders meeting in Bangkok in 1996. In fact, Brid still looks the same. Andy Rutherford still looks the same. Well, you know. However, Bangkok is no longer the same. This was in 1996. This was a period of democracy in Bangkok. This could not be held in Bangkok today. The military is not going to allow a free expression of democratic ideas in Bangkok today, which is why we should never take for granted our democratic rights. It can be reversed, and it has been reversed in Bangkok, where the military at this point, and our Thai participants here are going to attest to this, would want seminars, meetings like this cleared to them, and if there's any hint of mass participation and democracy, they are not going to allow something to be held like this. And indeed, they have in fact done this in several places, including at Thammasat University. Well, the ASEM, the Asia-Europe Leaders Meeting, is also about 18 years old. And I wish I could say that it has really contributed something that's very positive towards advancing Asia-Europe people's interests. But I think that I would have to search far and wide to find that. In 1996, this was the eve of the Asian financial crisis. In 1998, we had the meeting of the ASEM as well as AEPF in London. A number of you were there. This was a time when a number of the governments in Asia were asking the governments in Europe to push the IMF not to impose such restrictive austerity conditions on the peoples of Asia. And basically, what the European government said, you have to swallow the pill. You have to undergo austerity. And for the next several years, we had tremendous suffering that were inflicted on the Asian economies. In just 3 weeks, about 1 million people in Thailand fell below the poverty line, and in Indonesia, something like around 12 million people fell before the poverty line during that period. In 2012, today, what do we have is a situation where it is the people in Europe, especially in Southern Europe, in places like Italy, that are now suffering the same kinds of austerity conditions that were imposed on people in East Asia in the late 1990s. And what are the ASEM governments going to talk about? They're not going to be talking about lifting these restrictive conditions. In fact, I saw the agenda. There's nothing about repealing the IMF, the European Commission, the European Central Bank's conditions, the Troika's conditions for the political economy of Europe. And what we are anticipating now that even Germany is beginning to stumble is that the recession is not going to be lifted because you have the same old neoliberal paradigm imposed on Asia in late 1990s. It continues to be the institutions of Europe that continues to impose this political economy of suffering on the people of Europe, especially on the people of Southern Europe at this point in time. So basically, from austerity to austerity, ASEM really hasn't accomplished that much. It continues to be a talk shop. However, AEPF, the People's Forum that began in Bangkok, has over the last 18 years really performed a tremendous service in terms of linking civil society in Asia and civil society in Europe. I would just like to say that in 1998, during the London meeting, both European and Asian civil society networks demanded that, in fact, the austerity conditions, the role of the banks, all of this that were, in fact, creating such suffering for people in Asia be lifted. And there was this joint, strong intercontinental solidarity to move away from corporate-driven globalization and to end the financial repression that had been imposed by the banks. In the next few years, we had a flourishing of joint campaigns, joint research on many areas, on opposition to the US war in Iraq in 2003, joint campaigns against corporate-driven globalization and free trade, joint campaigns and research on the role of global finance. AEPF took up very strongly the case of Burma. You had the research, there was campaigns against climate change, campaigns on the whole new push for free trade represented by the Transnational Trade and Investment Program, the TTIP, as well as the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Just recently, the groups that have been joined in APF, like the TNI, have released a book called Shifting Power, Critical Perspectives, that is on the rise of the BRICS. So I think what we're seeing is that, in fact, in contrast to ASEM, the AEPF has been extremely productive. You can just see, for instance, the role of AEPF when you contrast this to civil society linkages between North America and Asia. There is no such organization that performs the trans-Pacific role that the AEPF performs with respect to civil society networks between Europe and Asia. And I think that this is really a very important difference in terms of many of the issues and campaigns that we've been fighting for. So let me just say that, among other things, what can we say we have achieved? Well, AEPF has been very important in terms of creating and monitoring and blocking bad deals, like or pushing and creating opposition to such things as the EU-ASEAN FTA. I think that the debate, of course, in APF, we've had very interesting debates. We have not been a uniform organization. The role, for instance, the relationship between civil society and government has been an interesting debate within AEPF. So basically, and continues to be a very healthy debate. Let me just say that in many ways, one of the crowning points of the AEPF was, as Shumeng and Charles and others have mentioned, was the meeting in Laos that took place in Laos, where Sombat played a very critical role. I think that in contrast to ASEM, which was quickly forgotten, the AEPF and the way that it was able to draw in the participation of Lao civil society and attracted so much attention showed that it had become a moral force. It had become a source of moral authority. And I think that this tremendous prestige that the AEPF had been able to develop over so many years was probably one of the reasons that frightened the authorities. Okay? And unfortunately, the events happened as they did. So in many ways, the high point of the AEPF was what happened in Vientiane. But I think that we really need to, in fact, see if we can, in fact, continue to develop the AEPF in the way that it's been developing over the last few years, not only to be a strong moral force, but also to be a strong political force. So I would just like to end by saying that we have had 18 years of relationships. We have had 18 years of common struggle. Let us look back at the achievements of the AEPF, and let us look forward to, in fact, even gaining more in terms of creating these really solid bonds between civil society networks in Europe and in Asia. And let us perform our very critical role of monitoring and disciplining governments so that they don't, in fact, oppress their people. Thank you very much.